Hi, and welcome to the Exposing Business Intelligence module of SharePoint Ignite Developer Series. My name is Vesa Juvonen, and today we're going to cover many of the different business intelligence tools in SharePoint 2010, which the developers can build upon. Our agenda for today's module is begin with overview and primer of the business intelligence space, as well as the business intelligence tools available to SharePoint 2010 implementations and developers. We'll then dive deeper details with Visio, Excel, Performance Point services, and we'll discuss and go through many of the different development scenarios for each of these areas. Okay, let's get started with the primer on business intelligence space. So, what exactly is business intelligence, and what do we mean when we talk about leveraging data to make informed business decisions? Essentially, most business environments have important data stored in many different locations. This data on its own may be some value. However, the real value comes from being able to aggregate this disparate data into a single source, and then being able to use that data to perform analytic tasks and data mining. To this end, application developers and IT professionals can provide the functionality business users need for measuring their past and expected performance against predefined benchmarks. Additionally, being able to provide timely, relevant reporting functionality against this data can be useful as well, and helps business users to understand and make sense regarding the underlying details of their data. Now, let's look at the high-level overview of different business intelligence tools available to SharePoint 2010. This slide lists many of the different BI tools which are available to SharePoint 2010 and shows some of the different platform services provided by each. Taking a look at the center of the diagram, you'll notice that we've listed Performance Point, Excel, and Visio services, and we've also included the new charting and indicator functionality, as well as business connectivity services. Performance Point services provides the framework for creating and publishing business data dashboards, scorecards, and key performance indicators. Users can use Performance Point as an authoring tool for dashboards, and they can also choose to leverage the external data found in Excel services, SQL Server databases, analysis services cubes, Power Pivot workbooks, and other data sources directly in their dashboards. Excel services is focused on giving end users the ability to work directly with the data that's important to them, and SharePoint 2010 includes functionality which makes it possible for end users to publish and share the data they've stored in Excel workbooks. They can also choose to have the processing of the workbooks executed on dedicated Excel calculation servers, and they can even work with the application developers to create new solutions and mashups using this data. From visualization perspective, Visio services can be used to render visual diagrams and structures that are bound directly to business data, and also includes extensibility options that developers can use to further customize the user experience. This slide provides a high-level viewpoint of the business intelligence tools and solutions available from Microsoft, and helps to clarify where each tool fits in the overall picture, as well where SharePoint 2010 fits in and completes the other tools. A trusted BI platform is critical for business intelligence solutions, and users must have confidence in the quality and accuracy of the data upon which they are basing their decisions. To this end, they need to know where the data came from, and it needs to be both timely and reliable if it's going to be used in a decision-making process. That's where the power of integrated BI platform like SQL Server 2008 comes into play. Once you have the data ready to be used, the middle tier comes into play, This is where the business users will actually interact with the data and will turn it into something that is useful to them as they make wise, informed decisions. The numbers that we pull from other systems are just that, raw numbers and data. Users will need applications and content to turn the data into relevant, actionable items. And that's where the middle tier comes into play. Finally, users will need the right tools and applications to ensure that they can use the data in the way that makes it easier for them to make informed decisions. This could include applications and tools that range from personal to team to organizational and corporate tools, all with familiar look and feel, and all integrated and working with the user's operating system, email and internet search functionality. And this is what the power of integration through Microsoft Office brings you. From Office productivity tools like Excel to the team and collaboration tools of SharePoint, by integrating BI seamlessly into broader business productivity suite that includes search, collaboration, unified communications, and content management, we are able to offer our end users a much richer experience. In addition to this, we provide many different extensibility options that make it possible for developers to build upon this infrastructure, thereby extending the reach and capabilities of fully integrated and customizable BI solutions. With Oten BI solutions, you might find that you'll need several different tools, footprints and integration points. In our BI tools, we look at three main layers of data and information that you need, all within the Office and SQL Server families. The data structure and business intelligence platform, the middle tier, where the business user comes into play, and the individual layer where you and I use the data to make decisions. Now that we've covered the overall high-level view of business intelligence, as well as the primary platform tiers available from Microsoft, let's look at some of the different ways the platform delivers BI value for end users. SQL Server 2008 R2 provides many compelling tools and features which can be used in designing and building a business intelligence solution. From SharePoint 2010 perspective, SQL reporting services can be exposed using specific report services web parts, which can be installed on a SharePoint 2010 form via the SQL Server setup application and reporting services add-on for SharePoint. In addition to reporting services, SQL Server 2008 R2 provides new technology called Power Pivot, which can be integrated with both the Excel client application as well as SharePoint 2010 environments. In Excel environment, Power Pivot makes it possible to work with extremely large scale of data from multiple heterogeneous data sources at one time, all within the Excel workbook files. User can also build relationships in the data, which efficiently lets you treat the data as a single data source. After users have imported data, built relationships, and created data structures in their Excel workbook, they can save this single Excel workbook as an XSLX workbook file, and it will continue to contain embedded data. From performance perspective, this is made possible by having SQL analyzing services manage the compression and processing of the data, which is completely transparent to the user. They just continue working with the Excel UI. So in short, Power Pivot for Excel means that the Excel desktop applications is the Power Pivot client and end user. As far as it relates to SharePoint 2010, Power Pivot can be installed on a farm to process and make these Excel Power Pivot workbooks available to users via Excel services. You can find more details on configuring both SQL Server reporting services and Power Pivot in the SharePoint 2010 Ignite IT Pro module titled Business Intelligence and SharePoint 2010. Another new feature that's included in SharePoint 2010 is the new Business Intelligence Center site template. The Business Intelligence Center, or BI Center, is SharePoint site template which users can use to create new BI sites, and it contains links to get users started with many of the BI tasks. It's also used as a starting point for launching Performance Point Dashboard Designer, which is a click once application, and it includes samples and example scenarios you can start working with by building a new BI features within the SharePoint 2010. Another new ability for SharePoint 2010 will ship after RTM as a plugin on top of SharePoint 2010 environments that leverage Fast Search Center 2010. The Business Intelligence Indexing Connector extends the search capabilities of Fast Search Server, making it available understand and index specific types of business intelligence documents, primarily Excel XSX files, including Power Pivot data, and RDL files from SQL Server SQL reporting services. The content of these file types can be indexed and added to the search index, which efficiently means that when queries are executed, users are able to search against content stored in these files. Additionally, the add-in creates a new search tab called Reports that will only display search results of these file types and will identify where the terms are located in the files. For instance, in a pivot table in an Excel workbook. In addition to this, the source data is not always visible to the report when it's scrolled. In addition to SQL Server and Fast Search Server add-ons we've discussed on the previous slides, SharePoint 2010 includes many BI-specific web parts, such as the new Status Indicator web part and Charting web part. Both of these web parts can be configured from within user's browser. The key scenarios around these web parts is that the users can configure them directly and there's no hard requirement on any backend services. Also, each of these web parts can retrieve data from multiple sources. The KPI shown above can be tied to a specific value that has been manually entered by end users. As an example, a business user may want to display an KPI representing an overall status that can't be calculated. This might be something such as judgmental decision by manager or a group consensus following a business meeting. The lists and external lists included in SharePoint 2010 represent list data in SharePoint or list data that has been made available via BCS, which is discussed in greater detail in other modules in this course. From BI perspective, this functionality opens the possibilities in that your users have the potential to use many more data sources outside of SharePoint, since BCS can pull the data from database services or .NET code. Excel services and SQL analysis services are two data sources which are key components of many BI solutions, and SharePoint 2010 includes functionality to display this data as well via Excel-specific web parts. Finally, there are many other web parts in SharePoint which can be used to display business intelligence data. For instance, the chart web part can be used to tandem with other SharePoint BI web parts to further illustrate data structures and rendering. For example, the chart on this slide could have been created in an Excel client, but that would require that the data be created and in Excel and rendered by Excel services. The charting web part shown here makes it possible for users to provide basic charting of the data in a browser without the need to tie it directly to Excel. So now that we've discussed some of these web parts and tools available to SharePoint 2010, let's take a look at the chart web part and status indicators in the next demo.
In this demonstration we'll have a look on the charting capabilities and the KPI capabilities of the SharePoint out of the box. So when currently we have created already a site, and then we have a sales list which is containing information concerning individual sales based on individual countries. So there's the country, the target of the year, warning, the current sales, and the actual continent, which we will demonstrate with the KPIs. So moving back to the front page of the site, if we want to show that information in a graphical format, we can really easily create this charts dynamically based on the information. So within the business data group we have the chart web part available, and let's add that to the page. And the chart and web part is a really powerful web part for showing dynamic information or showing dynamic charts based on the information from lists or other external sources. The first thing which we need to do is to define which information is used to actually create the chart. So if we connect the chart to data, we can see the different options available. We're able to consume information from another web part, or we are able to connect to a list or business data catalog, or connect to consume also extra services. In this case the information is in a SharePoint list, so let's connect to a list. And the information which we are interested is on sales list, so let's move forward. And this is the kind of a preview of the list information which is available. And we want to see the current sales of individual countries. So let's use the current as the U field. And we want to see the countries visible in X field. And we are also able to configure the different settings for series and different settings for other fields and so on. There's a lot of options available with the charting web part. And this is now a dynamically drawn web part or dynamically drawn picture of the data which we are exposing from the list. If we want to actually have the same information visible or shown in a different way, we're able to modify this by customizing the chart. So now that the data has been connected, we're able to choose what kind of chart we actually want to use to show the different information, the different sales information in this case. Let's actually switch to pie charts, and let's switch to some nice 3D graphics, and let's use the simple pie in 3D and click finish. So we're able to see that the same information is exposed in a different way. And there's different kind of settings available for the colors and color settings as well. But we're able to see that the information is also, the information is also dynamic. So in this case, if for example the China's sales don't match up, and we need to, the China sales, there's a minor issue with the sales, and the actual value is actually 120,000, not million and 200,000. And if we move back to the front page of the site, we're able to see that the China and the chart is dynamically modified based on the information which is available within the list. And we can definitely use this for creating dynamic charts and dynamic information to be visible anywhere we want within our portal. The other thing which I wanted to show you was the KPI functionality. So we already have created a sales status KPI list, which is having two different KPIs available currently. Let's add a new KPI concerning the American sales. So when we start creating these KPI values, we KPI list information, which we can then expose within the front page of the site, we're able to say which site is the source for our information, and in this case the source is the sales site. And in there we already have a North America selection available, so we're able to say that we are interested on those or collecting that information which is visible within the North America. And then we're able to set the actual objectives for the individual KPI values. So if the overall sales is 1,500,000, that's the green light, and 1 million is the yellow. And let's click OK, and we're able to see the current status of America. We actually didn't associate the information now properly, so let's fix the association, since now we're calculating the individual value, not on the sum. So let's edit the indication to actually count the sum of the selected column, which is the current sales. And let's click OK. So we're able to actually see updated value, and the value is the current sales is already at $1,330,000. So now that we want to expose this information within the front page of the site, there's obviously multiple different ways to do that, but there's also KPI web boards available. So we're able to, for example, insert a KPI indicator, a status list web board, which we associate to these KPI lists, and then we're able to show those KPI informations based on the actual data, which is dynamically all the time calculated based on the sales information. So the sales status list is the list containing the different KPI values. Let's select that one. The icon is totally fine as save, and let's scroll down. We will only want to see single indication values, so that's totally fine. Let's click OK, and we're able to see dynamically those KPI informations from the list data, which can be then dynamically updated. If we are interested, we're also able to definitely show, for example, the most important KPI values as indications using the indicator details web board. So let's add that web board there, and let's associate that to the particular KPI we are interested of. So this, the list is still the sales status. That's correct. So the status indicator which we are actually interested of is the overall sales, and the icon set is, let's change that to traffic lights. Let's click OK, and we have a updated page with the KPI information available. The overall sales is currently just a little bit over the goal, so if we actually now have changes within the overall sales, and let's modify the overall sales a little bit by decreasing the United States sales to be at the moment in $550,000. So if we move back to the site, we're able to see that the changes are dynamically reflected based on the information on the list itself. And obviously also the actual information, the chart information, has been updated dynamically as well. So we're really easily, just by using mouse and a few clicks, we're able to create these dynamic dashboards which dynamically update based on the information within the list. And the list information can be easily integrated to any system using, for example, the web services, REST interfaces, or the client object model functionalities, which are available in SharePoint 2010.
Hopefully that demo helped to illustrate the value and ease of use of chart and status indicator web parts available in SharePoint 2010. We now are going to turn to Visio Services and take a closer look on that functionality in detail. The new Visio Services functionality makes it possible for users to create and share Visio web drawings in browser. So this means that the other users can view the Visio diagrams in their browsers without needing to have the Visio client installed on their machine. Another nice feature of the Visio Services is that it gives users the ability to connect their Visio web diagrams to various data sources, and these drawings can be updated and refreshed automatically when changes occur to the underlying data sources. Some of the data sources Visio web drawings can be some of the data sources to which Visio web drawings can be connected include SQL Server database, Excel workbooks published to SharePoint, SharePoint lists, as well as OLEDP or ODBC connections and custom data providers. From a developer point of view, the Visio Services Mashup API and the fact that the Visio Services web part supports web part connections add a nice extensibility to this part of the product. This slide shows a sample of using Visio Services to monitor a data center. You can see that the underlying data and therefore the Visio web drawing has changed in the last hour. This drives home the fact that you can build a data-driven Visio diagrams and display them directly to users in browser. This functionality on its own is compelling and is especially more so when combined with other BI features available to our users when creating dashboards and custom solutions. With regards to rendering, the resulting diagrams are browser agnostic and can be displayed in IE, Firefox or Safari, and can be rendered with a full fidelity using Silverlight or optionally as PNG files for a down-level experience. The Visio diagrams can be connected to SQL Server databases, Excel workbooks, SharePoint lists, as well as data sources accessed via OLEDP or ODBC connections. The implementation scenarios include the ability to support Kerberos as well as the unattended service account via Secure Store service. Finally, as mentioned earlier, the diagrams are dynamic and can be configured to refresh the data automatically depending on the specific settings within the service application. As mentioned earlier, Visio Services can be extended to participate in a page-wide mashup applications. Some of the typical usage scenarios will include responding to user interactions with diagrams, sharing data with other web parts, annotating diagrams and scrapping diagrams. From developer and administrative cost perspective, the overall cost is very low as this functionality can be implemented via JavaScript or ASPX pages. Okay, so now that we've discussed some of the details of Visio Services, let's take a look at it in deeper detail in the next demo.
In this demonstration, we will have a look how to utilize Visio Services within your SharePoint farm and how can we use data connected drawings within the Visio file to provide this dynamic Visio drawings also within the intranet or within their SharePoint deployments. In this case, we have a SharePoint site collection where we have a site where we have a single farm monitoring document, but we also have a single list which is having information concerning individual servers within the particular environment. And in this case, the servers also have the status indication, which is indicating what is the proper status of the particular server at the moment. And we are supporting, within this case, we are noting unknown, OK and unavailable. So how do we actually create a drawings based on this kind of information? Let's move back to the front page of the site and let's open up our Visio file within the Visio. and start modifying the information. So this is our Visio drawing, and we can see that there is a drawing of a SharePoint farm. There's 3 different web front ends available, 2 SQL servers, 1 application server, or actually 2 application servers. And the data in here has been bound to data within the SharePoint list. And we can do that by using the data binding functionality within the Visio. So there's link data to shapes, and from here we can select which kind of information to which data source we actually connect this information to. When we have selected the actual list to be used, in this case it was the network equipment, we're able to then consume this external data dynamically, also using Visio services. So meaning that we're able to demonstrate this or show this these dynamic drawings also within the SharePoint farm. In this case we have already connection available to the list information, and we're able to see, for example, that the web frontend 1 is status is OK, but for the web frontend 3 status is unknown. And we have binded data graphics to this information. So if we have a look on the actual data graphic in here, we're able to see that we have bounded information concerning the individual elements within the data within the graphics to data fields which are coming from the SharePoint list. So for example, the status, we have said that the status field will be the icon set, and we're able to define what kind of style we are showing the actual status or what kind of icons were used to show the status of the servers. When the initial settings have been done, so in here we can see that there's the unavailable is shown with red and unknown with a question mark and OK as a green element. So when the bindings have been done, we're able to then utilize this Visio drawing dynamically within the SharePoint site. So we're able to publish this Visio drawing to the site itself. Let's move back to the site and start consuming the Visio information, or showing the Visio information in a browser UI. First of all, the initial rendering which we can use is using the standard Visio services rendering mechanism, which will expose the Visio drawing to be available almost throughout the screen. So it will use the minimal master page and show the drawing within the screen. And the whole drawing is dynamic. So if we go and change the SQL Web 01 status within our list, we are able to see those changes also within the drawing itself. So the SQL Server SQL Web 01 will be changed the status OK from unavailable. And if we now move back to the actual drawing itself, we're able to see that the changes have been applied, and the SQL Web 01 has been changed dynamically to indicate the current status. We can also expose the Visio drawing directly within the web pages using the Visio web part. So if we take the page in edit mode and insert a Visio web part to the page, we're able to expose our Visio drawing from any location within the site collection. And we are able to actually go and select which Visio file we want to show. And in this case our file is in farm monitoring within the shared documents. Let's click OK. Let's automatic refresh, let's set that to 0. Basically means that we are refreshing the drawing in every single request, just in case that so that we are able to demonstrate the functionality that we are updating the list information. And then clicking OK. We are able to see the particular drawing directly within the web part, which is basically we can expose the same drawing in any place where we are able to add these web parts. So let's save the changes and let's go and change a little bit our settings. So we currently have the web frontend 1 is OK, but let's go and change that to unavailable. Web frontend 1 and edit and unavailable. And save the changes, and when we go back to the site we can see that the particular web frontend is now unavailable. So this actually is relatively interesting functionality when we think about the connectivity improvements which we have for the list information. So that list information which can be, if the list information is used as the data source for our drawing, we can update the list information using client object model, web services or REST interfaces. So we're able to actually almost in real time, for example, see the status of a SharePoint form or whatever information is we want to actually see. It's basically up to the Visio designer or people power information workers to create these drawings and then create the associations between the drawings and the actual data from wherever the data is actually coming from. Other thing to demonstrate here is the client JavaScript object model which is available for Visio Access. And let's demonstrate that by adding a content editor web port just above the Visio Web Access. So let's insert a web port, a content editor web port here, and let's add some JavaScript to the content editor web port so we're able to manipulate the actual drawing which is visible. So let's link this web port JavaScript file, which I will show also shortly, which is located within the same site. So we're loading JavaScript file within the same site, and that JavaScript file is actually generating the text box and the button which we can see here. Let's save and close the changes, and this demonstrates the functionalities available concerning the JavaScript object model. So relatively simple thing. There are different drawing elements which are available within our drawings. There was SQL element, web frontend elements, and so on. And using the JavaScript object model from this alternative web part, we're able to, for example, identify all of the items which have SQL within them. Let's zoom a little bit larger. Or we are able to, for example, select all of the items which have web frontend in their name. So we're able to, for example, indicate different statuses based on the JavaScript object model. And this demonstrates well the functionality or capabilities that we're able to do these mashups. We're able to manipulate the Visio drawing and, for example, indicate different things within the Visio drawing using a JavaScript object model. Let's have a look on the actual JavaScript file and how does that look like. The JavaScript file which we used in here is in site assets element, and we're able to save that to the file system. And in this case, let's actually save that as a TXT file, so we're able to actually open up it directly within the desktop. And let's open up the Visio script for showing the actual functionality. So in here, within the Visio drawing, we are first getting control or instance to the control. We are then adding a handler dialog complete, and the actual text box is rendered here. So we have the document write, find text, the input text box, and the button. And when we click the actual button, the actual search happens, which is implemented as a find function, which basically goes through the different shapes within the Visio drawing, and then indicates them or add highlights based on if the proper shape is actually found with the proper text which was given to the text box. So relatively simple, relatively straightforward, but we're able to move and manipulate the JavaScript or the Visio document using this JavaScript object model. So let's go one more time to the Visio, to the page, and have a look on the functionality. So if we're trying to find the SQL, we're able to find that those are indicated in green as defined in the JavaScript file. Or if we are trying to find app, and those are indicated as well, or the web front ends in this case. And if we try to do something which is not there, we are nothing is actually indicated. So the web front end, and this way we're able to definitely create these nice mashups which utilizes the Visio drawings as well.
The next area we'll look at in the product is the new Excel Services features and functionality included in SharePoint 2010 Enterprise implementations. So, what exactly is Excel Services and how is it used? Excel Services extends the Excel desktop experience to web, and it is built upon server-hosted version of the Excel calculation engine. This has several advantages, with the most obvious being that it gives users the ability to interact with Excel workbooks directly in their web browsers. This increases the overall reach and use case scenarios of Excel-based data and applications. The previous version of Excel Services included the Web Service API, and the 2010 version keeps this and adds two new APIs in form of the new REST API and JavaScript object model. The REST API makes it possible to expose Excel object via simple URL. For example, you could embed an URL of the Excel chart and retrieve an image of that chart from Excel Services to display it on your web page. The JavaScript object model makes it possible to build custom script in hosted environment like SharePoint Online that will use the data from your Excel workbooks to customize your UI. Excel in this case becomes another processing engine accessible to your shared applications. Another advantage is the granularity of data exposed. Using Excel Services web parts, you can control which part of the workbooks are available, which allows for more control regarding data permissions and access. At the high level, Excel Services consists of the core components shown in this illustration. The Excel Calculation Server, or the ECS, is the primary component, and it's responsible for loading and calculating the spreadsheets. And it also has functionality which is responsible for refreshing external data, executing server-based user-defined functions, and maintaining session state. On the web front-end servers, the Excel Web Access web part, or the EWA, is the SharePoint web part responsible for creating the HTML renderings from the results returned by the ECS. EWA makes it possible to display the results in browser and allows users to interact with them. In a customization scenario, SharePoint application developers can write a custom code to interact with the ECS by using Excel Web Services API, REST API, and the JavaScript object model. We'll discuss these APIs further detailed in following slides. Also included on the web front end is the ECS proxy that handles communication between the tiers in a multi-server environment. The proxy manages load balancing situation where you have two or more application servers running in ECS mode. Finally, on the back end, Excel Services uses three types of SQL Server databases. The content databases are used for storing workbooks and content. The server application databases for storing information about the configuration of the service app, and then finally the farm configuration database. As with the previous version, the SharePoint server provides the platform for hosting ECS and storing as well as the security of the workbooks as mentioned earlier. Continuing with the new service application infrastructure, Excel Services makes its functionality available to the farm as a service application, which means that it can be scaled out independently to many individual application servers running as the ECS service. As mentioned earlier, Excel Web Access Web Part EWA is useful for displaying full workbooks, specific sheets, or individual items within SharePoint Web Parts page. That being said, Excel Services is not just about providing web client user interface for visualization consumption, as it can also provide raw data and API functionality to make it possible to create a wide array of visual presentations of the data. From programmers' point of view, the Excel Web Services could enable scenarios where developers build rich client applications to access the raw data and to leverage Excel's server-based calculation engine. Continuing with the customization theme, a potential REST services implementation could involve embedding a chart rendered in Excel in a web page. As REST will retrieve the data from Excel Services, the chart will always be based on the live data. From performance perspective, since the scenario uses REST, the HTTP infrastructure for caching can be enabled, which would provide more efficient distribution of the content. The JavaScript object model could be used to build rich dashboard application on a SharePoint page that ties together Excel workbooks within the single page, driven by user interactions and data refresh. This scenario is even more compelling in a sandbox scenarios since it allows creation of applications without no custom server-side code. Excel workbook data in browser can be accomplished with the EWA as mentioned earlier, and the EWA supports SharePoint filters and basic user interaction, including filters, sorting, and working with pivot tables. For even more browser-based Excel functionality, you'll want to take a look at leveraging the new Excel web application, part of the Office web application. This feature is discussed more greater detail in a SharePoint 2010 Ignite IT Pro version of this course as mentioned earlier. Excel is probably one of the most frequently used business intelligence tools today, and the most customers have many existing Excel workbooks and data models in place already. As opposite to writing the existing business logic, formatting and functionality in these workbooks, these existing Excel files can be stored in SharePoint and exposed via Excel Services. By using a combination of web parts to expose the data coupled with custom JavaScript accessing the Excel Services object model, many of these data structures and Excel workbooks can be combined in a rich SharePoint BI dashboards and web pages. This allows leveraging existing works while enabling the connections and collaboration wanted in a BI portal environment. We've expanded and enhanced Excel Services programmability from previous version, and over the course of the next few slides we are going to go into deeper detail in each of these programmability options available for Excel Services in SharePoint 2010. We've kept the Web Services API from 2007, And one of the great new features for 2010 is that it now supports editing and saving workbooks programmatically. This can be used to automate workbook-level operations from within custom code, as well as saving workbooks back to new versions of the original file. That being said, it's important to remember that the web services will require custom code and compilation before they can be used. If you're planning to incorporate this directly into SharePoint, you'll want to install the code using the feature and solution framework we've discussed earlier in this course. The new Excel REST APIs makes it possible for users to access Excel objects directly from a single HTTP call. This means that users can embed a simple reference to their Excel REST API directly in their HTML with no need to write, compile and deploy custom code. The results from the Excel services can be returned as images, HTML and XML atom fields. So this provides end user an ability to embed dynamic object directly in their web pages, and it opens the door up to many different types of mashup implementations built with an Excel content. A more advanced implementation of REST is focused on actually passing values to the Excel workbooks, perhaps updating a cell in a spreadsheet with this value, then having ECS recalculate the data model using this value, and finally returning the REST results back. An example of this might include having a user click somewhere on the map of their country, passing the country information to the workbook via REST, and having the ECS update on an Excel chart which displays information about this country, before returning the results back in the form of an image of an updated chart. From an end-user perspective, they click a map and see chart update with the specific information related to that country they've clicked on. All dynamic and in real time, and all without compiling or redeploying custom code on a server or workstation. From a security standpoint, the REST API goes through ECS proxy. Security permissions are enforced by SharePoint, which means that the permissions to the workbooks set up by end users and administrators is still respected by REST. So what does the REST syntax look like, and how do we go about leveraging REST API from being within our SharePoint web pages, dashboards and mashups? First of all, it's important to understand that SharePoint installs a new file named Excel REST ASPX on every web front-end server, and that you'll use this when you're addressing the REST API. This file is located using the name of your server /VTI_bin/Excel REST ASPX. To use the REST API with the existing workbook, you'll build your URL using this format and will then append the remaining SharePoint path to a specific workbook. For instance, after constructing the URL to the Excel REST ASPX file, you'll continue using / then the site name / document library name / the name of a workbook, for instance, my workbook XSLT / the word model. At this point, you'll have the full REST URL for your workbook and can then choose to access the different object type listed in the slide. These include items such as named range, charts, tables, and pivot tables. Now that we've discussed the Excel Web Services and a new Excel REST API, the final Excel Services API which we'll discuss is the new Excel JavaScript Object Model, also known as Excel JSON. This object model is useful for scenarios where users would like to create functionality between one or more Excel Web Access web parts. It provides a subset of the EWA functionality and makes it possible for administrator or application developer to insert a JavaScript code on a web page to affect range navigation, cell values, and other grid operations. The JSON enables the developers to access items such as Excel spreadsheets, range, tables, pivot tables, and charts. Developers can then set and retrieve values from individual cells or from named ranges. It also provides hooks for events that are raised when user changes the active selection cell or edits a cell. Finally, the JSON can be used to scroll to different regions of the spreadsheet or to change which sheet or named item is displayed. As an example, it's common for users to use EWA web parts, and these web parts can consume data via SharePoint Web Parts Filter framework. However, the opposite, using EWA web parts as the data source, is not supported. That said, developers can use their JSON to detect user events in one EWA and then use those to capture events to programmatically drive another EWA. So this efficiently uses an EWA as a data source for other web parts. From an implementation perspective, you'll need a web part page with at least one EWA web part and a content editor web part. The content editor web part can be used to link the page with the file containing the custom JSON code. Now that we've discussed the different Excel Services APIs, let's take a closer look at them in next demo.
In this demonstration, we will have a short look on different Excel functionalities available in SharePoint 2010. One of the new functionalities available is the Office web applications, so we're able to actually see and even edit the individual Excel files directly within the browser. And these applications are fully capable of doing additional formatting, which are also available within the real Excel formatting and a real Excel application. We can even edit the files within the browser if we want, and the basic editing functionalities are available directly from the browser side. If you need to do further advanced customizations, you can always open up the Excel file in Excel client and start modifying it from there. Let's move back to the front page of the site and have a look on something else. So the basic rendering is now fully supported. One of the really interesting functionalities as well is the REST interfaces. So when we request the Excel file using Excel REST ASPX page or ASPX file, we are able to kind of see inside of the Excel content, and we are able to actually see different kind of structures which are available for us to use. So for example, if we want to see the information only in certain format, for example the charts or the tables, we are able to view those using specific XML elements, or concerning the charts, these are actually images which are rendered on the fly. So it's a PNG image which we can utilize as well. So for example, for the charts, we are able to take the URL of individual chart within the Excel file and utilize that within our pages, which basically means that we're able to create images which are dynamic based on the content of the Excel file. So now when we save the changes, the actual content of that image is dynamic, and whenever we change the content of the Excel file, the content of the image will be reflecting those changes as well. That's a really good example of the new possibilities which are available with Excel. Obviously, all of the Office web applications support, for example, the UDF files, and we're able to execute different kind of functionalities as well. And we still have the same capability of hosting individual elements of the Excel file using a web port. So for any single page, we're able to add a business data web part, Excel Web Access web part, and then it's all about configuring which web part, which Excel file we want to actually see within that particular web part. And the web parts are a really good example of the capabilities where we would probably want to utilize, or we could utilize, the JavaScript object model. Basically meaning that we're able to interact with other web parts using the file and the content of the Excel file with the Excel web part. Let's select a particular item from the shared documents, the particular Excel document, and selecting that to be visible within the web part which we just placed on the site. So the sample document to be visible, and we're able to also say that which kind of elements we actually are interested of the within the particular file. So in this case we are able to, for example, say that the named item should be something specific. And I'll just go and actually have a look on the Excel REST interface side, so I'm able to ensure that we actually have a table 1 item which we can use for showing information. So we're able to show and say that show me the named item as table 1, which is table 1, and there is a one table within the within the Excel file which has been named as a table 1, and this way the web part is only showing that particular area of the Excel file. So we don't need to expose all of the calculations, additional fields or sheets within the Excel file, rather utilize that interested information in a table format. And this is really good place also to include, for example, this JavaScript object model as mentioned. So for the JavaScript object model we are able to take any of the values or selections within a single Excel Web Access web part or within a single element within that web part and pass those between the different web parts within the site. And that really brings flexibility concerning the different kind of mashup scenarios which we might end up doing. That sums up our really fast Excel demo.
The final toolset we're going to look is the Performance Point Services functionality included in SharePoint Server 2010 Enterprise implementations. Performance Point Services provides a summary of information that has been chosen by the dashboard and scorecard designer. In a typical scenario, users and analysts would create a data dashboard using the Performance Point Dashboard Designer application and would then publish it to SharePoint site. Following to that, end users would be able to view the live data summarized for them. This summary makes it possible for end users to get a quick view on an entire set of systems and key performance indicators, enabling them to make efficient business decisions and to identify any potential business issues as soon as possible. The net result is that the functionality provided by Performance Point Services makes it possible for business users to see the information they need in an aggregated environment, giving them the information they need to make informed business decisions. As mentioned in a previous slide, we users can use the Developer Dashboard Designer application to design and deploy business intelligence dashboards, which provide the container that Performance Points store the others' content in. The goal of the dashboard is to provide all the business information a user needs right in front of them, while allowing them to quickly and easily explore any aspect as needed. For example, they could see that the projected sales for a region are lower than expected on a main dashboard page. They should be able to select that region and see the charts adjusting to focus on that region. Then they should be able to drill into data in a one click to see more information and supporting reports. Dashboards can contain dynamic hierarchies with navigation, which can provide the users with an ability to drill down and up, as well as providing features for using dynamic selections, such as children's or descendants, to drive the other elements of the dashboard. Many of the items available include creating key performance indicators, known as KPIs, as well as other important and displaying data from many different data sources within a single dashboard. The end result is that user can focus on choosing the features that best match and model the performance metrics and data analysis importance to their business. The Dashboard Designer is used for managing, arranging and formatting the items on a Performance Point dashboard. The Designer is a click-once application that communicates with SharePoint using the web services and client object model. It's important to note that all Performance Point dashboard content is now stored in SharePoint lists. In fact, you'll notice that one of the options on the list item includes the ability to choose Edit in Dashboard Designer. As far as accessing data sources goes, the data source information is stored as an BPSDC file, which is an XML file that contains all the relevant information Performance Point Services needs to connect and interact with the underlying data sources used in dashboards. We've discussed how the Dashboard Designer is used for designing and creating our dashboards and dashboard items as SharePoint content. However, it's important to remember that all of this content exists in a list inside a SharePoint and is exposed via Performance Point web parts. So this means that the dashboard renders the scorecard, report and filter object in these Performance Point web parts, which are installed in a web front-end servers at the installation. Another point of interest is that the Performance Point web parts are built on SharePoint Connection Framework, which means that they have ability to send data or receive data from other web parts on page. A final thing to note is that the PPS web part supports AJAX refresh on the client, which means that the users can navigate the data without page refresh or post back to the server. The next Performance Point feature we are going to look is the new decomposition tree available with Performance Point Server 2010. This feature that can be leveraged by business intelligence users to quickly and visually break down high-level data values from a multidimensional data set. Essentially, it makes it much easier for users to make sense of this high-level data and provides more clarity as to underlying details and data behind those values. From implementation perspective, the decomposition tree can be used in scorecards and analytic reports, and the net result is that users will be able to access its functionality in their BI dashboards in SharePoint. There are a few specific scenarios where you might choose to do some custom development for Performance Point. For instance, you may want to implement custom reports that render in a different manner than those available in Performance Point services out of the box. Following to this theme, you might want to create other custom objects or behaviors such as appearance and transforms used in scorecards. The scorecard transform is used to changing the appearance, contents and functionality of scorecards. This transformation can take place either before or after it queries the data source, or before rendering the scorecard in a web part. Let's take a look at using and customizing Performance Point services in SharePoint 2010.
In this demonstration, we'll have a short look on the Performance Point functionalities available in SharePoint 2010. This is the default Business Intelligence Center, which has been created using the Create Site functionality. And this is kind of a default demo site for demonstrating a lot of the different functionalities available. And for this simple demo, we'll start our demo using this one. When we start creating our dashboards, and especially performance bond services dashboard, the first thing which we need to do is to run or install a dashboard designer, which is a click once application available from the SharePoint itself, and it's providing us a tools to do proper designing of the performance point dashboards. So when I click the Run Dashboard Designer, the latest version of the application is installed into my environment, and I'm able to start designing my performance point dashboard functionalities. In this case, we have already created some of the dashboard elements earlier, so we're able to start consuming them directly within our dashboard. Of course, obviously, when we design these business intelligence functionalities, we need to start by designing the data cubes and analyze the information which we actually want to show. In this case, that information has been already done. The dashboard designer is something which we can use to design the actual dashboards and page layouts and look and feel of the dashboards as a rich client on a rich client side. And this is due to the fact that the dashboards are quite often relatively complex, and designing those directly within the SharePoint can be quite difficult. So we now have the performance point content which has been already created. We have the one KPI values concerning the performance, the month-to-date value, and the quarter-to-date and year-to-date value. Other elements which we actually have already defined is performance by country. So there is a scorecard which is showing information concerning individual countries, and this information is coming from database or data from analysis services, and it's exposed to our dashboard using the performance point. And the final element which we have already here available is analytic chart, performance by year, which can be used to view this same information in a more nicer way using a pie chart. So getting this information available within the site requires that we are creating a new element called a dashboard. And when we start designing these dashboard elements, we're able to design or decide which kind of layout we are actually having. And these actually are the same layouts, or they reflect the layouts of a SharePoint pages which will be created. In this case, we'll create two-column page, since we want to show two different things which are available within our designer. Let's name the dashboard as a demo dashboard, and then we can start modifying the different settings and what are we actually showing within our dashboard as part of the content. On the left column, let's place our analytic report here, which is the performance by year, so we're able to see the actual chart over there. And then let's add the scorecard, which has been created earlier, to the right side, so we're able to see that one there as well. Now that the information is available, let's save the changes, and then we can deploy our page directly to SharePoint. So let's do deploy to SharePoint, and now the following step is to decide what kind of master page we want to use and to which site we are actually deploying this dashboard to. In this case, the site is the sites/bi, and the dashboard library is totally fine. For the master page, we will use the out-of-the-box version 4 master page, since we don't have any custom master page available. The publishing start, and all of the different elements which we have defined are actually stored within the SharePoint site. So the SharePoint designer is only there for designing these dashboards, not for storing the individual data. And now we have the actual dashboard available. All of the information which is available in here comes dynamically from the database, from the SQL Server Analytics services, and we can further drill down this information based on this or clicking or using these dynamic web parts, which are all the time dynamically changing. We can even drill down within the charts as well. So if you're interested of only seeing the reseller sales amount concerning individual stage, that's possible as well. Or we can move back to up on a more higher level, or we can go to the Australia and see the Australia's information here as well. One of the really nice thing concerning the dashboard, concerning the performance point in 2010 is also the decomposition tree, which is available for analyzing the same information in a more visual format or in alternative format. And this basically creates this tree of showing different kind of information on different kind of views of the same data. So we're able to drill down, for example, the California level, and we're able to see the city level of the California. Or we're able to change the different crawling, different information and different ways we actually analyze the same data which is available for the decomposition tree. And this really gives power on analyzing the information and going through the different steps concerning how the actual information is consistent. And we can further modify the settings and go even further within the data as well, if the data is available for further modifications. Really nice functionality, and it demonstrates the power of utilizing the Microsoft Business Intelligence components and the dynamic way of handling the data really easily from the SharePoint platform.
Over the course of this module, we've discussed the overall business intelligence space as well as the major solutions available from Microsoft in the space. We focused the majority of the module on the new BI tools in SharePoint 2010, and we also discussed many of the new development APIs and functionalities available in the product. The key takeaway here is that we've made several investments focusing on making it easier for users to access and work with the data that's important to them in a meaningful and a timely manner. In addition to this, we want to make it easy for users to do this without needing to write custom code. That being said, we've made several APIs and developers investment for the scenarios where developers and business users want to create custom functionality and new features not currently available in the product. Thanks for watching this module, and please be sure to check out the MSND SharePoint BI articles as well as the SharePoint 2010 Ignite IT Pro module titled Business Intelligence and SharePoint 2010.